Okay, I think we can make a start now. Thank you all so much for joining us, and welcome to this penultimate session of our network forum. It's a real pleasure to have you all here for this discussion. Can I just make sure, there we go, thank you for that, just to make sure everyone's on mute. I think we're good now. As I said, it's a real pleasure to have you all here. Our session will be focused on the importance and challenges and benefits of collaboration between organisations in advocacy for the rights of children in street situations. Next slide, please. Before we get started, I am just going to run through some housekeeping points very quickly. I know some of you have been to all of our sessions this week and are probably sick of hearing this, but just to note that we will have plenty of time for questions for our speakers. If you would like to ask a written question, then please write it in the chat box. If you'd like to ask it with your microphone on, you can let us know in the chat, or you can raise your hand, that's fine too. Please do feel free to use the chat to introduce yourselves to the other participants. You can ask any technical questions. We've got a tech support person on the line whose name should be CSC Tech Support. So if you're having any issues, then please do message them. You can also share any links or resources you'd like to in the chat as well. Do tag us on social media using the hashtag CSC Network Forum 2021. We've had loads of great discussion on there over the week. And finally, as you will have been told a few minutes ago when you joined, the session is recorded and it is a meeting format, not a webinar format. So if you're not comfortable being recorded for any reason, then please do leave the session. We will make the recording available to everybody once the forum is over. So now that's out of the way, can I have the next slide, please, Ellie? Great, thank you. So as you can see, the aim of our session today is really about focusing in on an issue that we know is really important to many of our network members, which is how you can work together with other organisations to strengthen your advocacy for children in street situations. The topic of today's session has actually come through in lots of the other sessions we've had this week. On Wednesday, when we celebrated 1 year of the working group on women and girls, this point came up several times. And in our session on levers and barriers to accessing essential services, almost all of our panelists spoke about how important it is that they work with other organisations to advocate for change. Even this morning in our session on celebrating street workers, the importance of building networks and alliances came through very strongly. We know that advocacy is hard and it's challenging, but that it's something that's vital for many of you. And we also know that many members of our networks don't have dedicated advocacy colleagues, and it can be really hard to engage with that side of things, which we understand. Sometimes if we can't engage with advocacy, we know that it can feel like we just sticking a sticking plaster over issues and not dealing with some of the more long-term or root causes. Obviously, working with other organisations can bring us huge benefits, boosting our message, pooling resources, but we know that it's challenging too. It can be hard to agree on positions, it can be difficult to work out how we fit together, and it can cause tension. So today we wanted to bring together some different speakers who can share their personal experiences of collaborating with you, as well as give you a sense of why this collaboration is so important for advocacy, including at the international level. So I'm really pleased that you will hear from this wonderful panel. Can I have the next slide, please, Ellie? So I'm very pleased to introduce you to our three speakers today. First up, we will hear from Noelle Chukwuebuka, who is the executive director of the Education for Purpose initiative in Nigeria. Noelle will speak to you about her experiences setting up the Now Skin Network, which is a group of organisations working with children in street situations in Nigeria. We'll then hear from Madiha Ansari, who is the founder of Cities for Children in Pakistan. Who'll share her experiences with you of bringing together different organisations in Pakistan on some quite complex issues. And last but not least, we'll hear from Fanny, who's from Child Rights Connect in Geneva, and she's going to bring the international advocacy perspective to our panel, speaking about some of the reasons why national level collaboration can have a huge impact at the international level. There will be time, like I said, to ask questions once all of our panelists have spoken, and we will then move on to some breakout rooms. So there'll be plenty of opportunity for you to share the challenges that you're experiencing, and share any of your success stories too, and really learn from each other and from our panelists. So, without any more talking from me, it is my pleasure to introduce you to Noelle to talk to you about her work with the Education for Purpose initiative in Nigeria and the network that they have recently set up there. So over to you, Noelle. I think you're on mute, Noelle.
Let's see. Okay, so yes. All right, thank you so much. I'm so happy to, be a panelist on this session. My name is Noelle Chukwuebuka, and I'm the Executive Director of Education for Purpose Initiative in Nigeria. I am also an academic researcher. So today I would not be talking about my organization, but I'll be talking about a network in Nigeria called the NOUTSIN. It's called the Network of Organizations Working for and with Street Connected Children. So I'm going to talk about this in the context of, the benefits of collaborative advocacy. Please, the next slide. Okay, so the next slide. Okay, so what I'm going to talk about, I'll tell you a brief background of this network, then go on to talk about the challenges we faced, the strategies that we use to try to overcome those challenges, and then the benefits of working as a group. So what is the story of NOUTSIN? My organization was founded in 2017, and I know that for sure we had a lot of limitations when it came to advocacy, access to stakeholders, just a lot of resource and issues. And so I thought that in 2019, I was still shuttling between Nigeria and the UK. And I said it would be a really good idea to have like a network of organizations working in Nigeria. I knew it cannot just be my organization, although I hadn't heard about a lot of organizations supporting street children. So, I ran this idea through Jessica Clark, and she was so happy about it. She said she's fine to get on board with it. And so that is actually how it started. And then I came back and approached a guy called Olakunle Sani. He runs an NGO in Nigeria as well that supports street children in the southern part of Nigeria. And so this network was actually birthed last year in 2020, of course, COVID stroke, but yes. So what is the mandate of this network basically? It's just a group of organizations, like I said, that support street connected children in Nigeria. And we really wanted to push the issues and, the challenges of these children to put it on policy priority through advocacy, of course. We also wanted to focus on capacity building for, organizations that support street children. Another thing we wanted to do is, idea sharing, resource sharing. Okay, so pooling resources together. So this is just one of the few mandates of the network. And currently we have 21 active members. Right. So this is the mandate of the network. For our advocacy purpose, we tried to refine just a few months ago. We noticed that there was a common pattern between different regions in Nigeria about the harassment of street connected children. And so we decided that in our list of needs and issues to address, I think we thought that the harassment of street connected children will really be the first thing we should tackle. So this is now our current advocacy purpose for the network. Okay, so for our current activities, we've had a couple of meetings. We're still trying to refine what we will do. But right now, we are trying to complete our national advocacy plan. We had a very wonderful workshop in July 2021, where we were able to practically start a document, which will soon be our national advocacy document. So we are still working on that. We also have plans to, carry out this national advocacy campaign against the harassment of street-connected children in 5 states in Nigeria. And this was supposed to have started being implemented, but we have some issues, and we're currently working on doing that. The next thing is we really want to register this network because that will give us some sort of, legitimacy and credibility. So these are our current activities and our future plans. So this is just an overview of the network for now. Of course, we're still in our early stages, so yes. Next slide. All right, so what challenges did we face when we were trying to set up this network? Now, the thing about life is when you come up with something, it's so beautiful, but then when it comes to implementing it, you then realize that it's a lot of work. And so that was what happened with Nouncing. It was a fantastic idea, but then the first challenge we faced was how do we even identify organizations that work with street-connected children. It might seem like an easy thing, but it wasn't, because some of these organizations do not have online presence. So our first strategy that we came up with was to, just design a little registration link form shared on social media, but that really didn't work. It turned out to, give us very low sign up. So yeah, we knew that they were organizations, but we just couldn't figure out how to get them to join the network. So that was the first challenge we faced, the first major challenge. So what we did was, snowballing a referral. So of course, in the course of my work, I've worked with other organizations. So I know, oh, I know this organization, this is what they do, this is how they support street-connected children. Please, can you join our network? This is what we are about. And yeah, that was how we were able to, get organizations to join our network, the first group of organizations that joined. Then the next very big issue was the issue of logistics or busy schedules of these executives. Everyone, we juggle a lot of hats. For me, I juggle more than, I don't know, 5, 10 hats, I don't know. But yes, it was so difficult trying to, get us to have meetings. Of course, the COVID also played a huge part in this, but even with that, we could of course take advantage of online meetings. But yeah, scheduling meetings was such a headache. But yeah, so we would say, oh, there's a meeting tomorrow, and people say it doesn't work for them. Next month, it doesn't work for them. And so we had this issue of having plans, but not being able to really implement or follow through because of this issue of busy schedules. So what we decided to do was to try to not just focus on framing meetings as just meetings, but trying to make sure that they were value-adding activities. So I was trying to convince these executives, please, you can give us 1 hour of your time to do this, and this is what it will do for you. And I just listed out 2 examples of that. In 2020, July, we had a webinar where Jessica Clark, Lizette also were speakers, and it was based on collaborative advocacy. And when they saw the effort that was put into organizing such a webinar, the turnout was quite good. And then in 2020, in July, we also had a capacity building workshop, again, to build the capacity of the organizations in the network to for advocacy, to help them do advocacy. And so when we have when they heard about a workshop like that, where they will gain practical skills of being able to design an advocacy plan, that alone was a good incentive. So that was what we did. The capacity building workshop was fantastic. I'm so grateful to the support from CSC for all the support. That was the reason why that capacity building workshop was a reality. And yes, I just put a fun fact there. I was heavily pregnant whilst planning this workshop, sending all the emails, all the programs, and yeah, I had my baby almost within all of this plan. So yeah, that was just something to advocate. All right, so the next challenge we had was administrative issues. So this is just a new network we were trying to set up. Who does what? So it felt like most of the responsibilities fell on my shoulders, fell on Olakunle's shoulders, fell on a few people's shoulders, and it was quite difficult, to be honest. So if we don't, spearhead things. A lot of things will not work, again, because of the schedules of people in the network. So what we have tried to do now is to keep emphasizing collective responsibility. So we say, this is not Noel's network, this is not this person's network, this is a group, a coalition. So for now, as we try to still figure out the structure of the network, we are focusing on collective responsibility. We are also trying to get some sort of structure where we set up teams, we set up steering committees, so everybody knows what they are doing. So these are just a few challenges that we faced. Yes, there's still a lot more, but I just decided to highlight these three and also talk about how we were able to, address these challenges. Next slide, please. Thank you. All right, so this is the main crux of this session, the benefits of working collaboratively. I am such a huge fan for working together. I believe that you achieve more in many cases when you work together. And I'll give an example in our own case. Like I said in the beginning or in the start of my talk, my organization tried to carry out some advocacy, but we just couldn't because we're a small organization. We didn't really, not a lot of people knew about what we were doing. It was very difficult gaining access to relevant stakeholders. But then now when we come as a network, under the Announcing Network, we have a better reception. There's a very key thing in planning and advocacy is who the stakeholders will listen to. And in our case in Nigeria, I believe that most stakeholders will listen to a network more than an organization. Although, of course, organizations that have had, that have done a lot of work are still, they get reception. But now when we come as a network, we have more access to stakeholders. People would listen to us because they understand that it's not just one voice, it's a collective voice of different organizations from different parts of Nigeria. So that was really, really good. That is something that we know is a key benefit from working together. And also, we also had, of course, just like I said, gaining access to relevant stakeholders. So we have some organizations in the network that might have worked with, say, someone in the government. And so it's very easy to get these introductions. And then we have the audience to then table the issues of street-connected children to the stakeholders. So that was a very huge benefit for working collaboratively. So the second benefit for us is joint pool of resources, shared ideas. Lucy has spoken about this, and this is such a key advantage of working collaboratively. And I'll give just an example in my case. So not just for advocacy, but also for your individual work in your organization. So for my organization, it's called Education for Purpose Initiative. And what we really do is we support street-connected children in the areas of education provision, skills acquisition, and now advocacy. But we realized that in the past months, we noticed that the children that we support in their list or hierarchy of needs, education wasn't like the top priority. What they were really faced with was the issue of hunger and the issue of finding accommodation, also the issue of drug addiction. And so these are not our areas of expertise. And so I remember, I think 2 months ago, I was so confused. I had meetings with my team and we weren't really going forward. And then I just reached out to, members in the Announcing Network. I was like, oh, I don't know what to do. What have you done in this case, and what can we do? And immediately, almost immediately, I got ideas, I got people willing to partner with us. And just like that, the issue that we had been trying to, figure out for quite a long time was, solved. So to me, that was such a huge benefit of having that network. If that network wasn't there, it would have been such a struggle, to be able to, address the issues that we were facing. So that's just one example of how joint pool of resources, shared ideas, best practices can be very useful when working together collaboratively. And so the final benefit that I will be highlighting here is a wider reach or scope in your work, in advocacy work. So again, I will give the context of Nigeria. When a lot of people hear about children in street situations or street-connected children in Nigeria, what they know is the Almajiri children based in the northern part of Nigeria. So their issues have gone up to, even international level of advocacy. But then in the other parts of Nigeria, the southern part, the western part of Nigeria, the middle belt, the issues of street-connected children are not highlighted because it almost seems like they don't exist. But with a network like this, with members from, Lagos, from Port Harcourt, like my organization, from Rivers State, we now have this representation because we have evidence that these children exist. We know about the issues, and then everyone is able to now focus on bringing the issues of these children in diverse regions in Nigeria to, the key relevant stakeholders again, making their issues priority. And for me, this is really a key benefit of working together, and I cannot wait. Right now, we are trying to write a report to really talk about the children in the southern part of Nigeria, the street-connected children. That would also serve as our advocacy tool. And so with that, we now understand that, okay, these are not our Almajiri children, but this is what they face and all of that. And this would not have been possible if we did not have a network. So yeah, these are just the benefits of working together in our own experience. There's still a lot of benefit, but these are the ones I've decided to, highlight. So yeah, this is the end of my very short, you can go to the next slide. This is the end of my very short presentation. I'm very, very happy to, answer questions, share more about what we are doing. And yeah, this is what I have for now. And yeah, I'm happy to talk more about what we are doing with the network. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Noelle, and there'll be plenty of time for questions. I've got plenty for you, but I'm aware of time. But that presentation was absolutely excellent. You really highlighted some of the big issues that we hear time and time again, especially some of those logistical challenges. And I'm really grateful that you shared your idea of value-adding exercises to bring people in. And that was so helpful. And you also highlighted some of the benefits so clearly. And yeah, I have to say that Noelle's a bit of a personal hero of mine, doing all this work while heavily pregnant and then giving birth. I just think she deserves all the praise in the world for that and for pulling this off with style. So thank you, Noelle. Okay.
Thank you so much.
We're going to move on to Madiha's presentation, but we'll come back to Noelle for questions, I'm sure. So our next speaker is Madiha Ansari, and just to say that both Noelle and Madiha were part of our Red Nose Day funded Training of Trainers program, where they were trained on issues like child rights and advocacy, which helped them to go back to the partners that they're working with to do some of the work that they'll be speaking to you about today. So as I've already said, Madiha is the founder of Cities for Children, who work in Pakistan, and she's got extensive development experience. She's going to talk to you today about some of her work in the past year or so with different organizations in Pakistan. So Madiha, I know that you want to share your screen. So Ellie, if we stop sharing our screen, Madiha, you should be able to pull up your slides yourself. Excellent, we can see that now. Okay, over to you, Madiha.
Thank you, Lucy. And yes, we were part of the Red Nose Day group, but also we've had just so much support from the consortium. Lucy and Lisette have been such a big support. We've been in touch constantly, just troubleshooting all the time. So thank you for that. Yeah, so I to start off with, I just wanted to sort of share a little bit about Cities for Children. So we were set up to protect what we call the right to a childhood for street-connected children, the right to read, to play, and to feel safe. And essentially, we work with organizations that give either education or protection services to street-connected children and help them build programs around learning and well-being. So we were not set up as an advocacy organization. We do have a rights-based approach, and it's kind of in our DNA. And so our public communications and our messaging would have that. And we sort of started to build a niche just, trying to get the message out there, trying to build a voice, trying to say, there are some things that all kids deserve. But it wasn't our core function. It wasn't what we were set up to do. And actually, we realized actually with CSC support and during the workshop that we did, that I met Noelle at as well, we actually realized that we were doing advocacy in our own way. We only went to sort of the 2.0 stage a little bit later, and sort of when we took a step back to look at sort of the core of a lot of the problems that street-connected children were facing, there were some things that we just couldn't ignore. And the advocacy sort of came from a place of feeling compelled to do something, because as the situation in Pakistan was turning out, the approach was in general less than empathetic towards street-connected kids. And policies and programs were not fit for purpose. It didn't seem like they were being tailored around their reality, but kind of around an idea of who street children were and where they were coming from. And there was and there continues to be a relatively repressive approach with public campaigns that are also, that criminalize street children and have sort of shaped public perceptions around them as well. And so, especially during COVID-19, when so many kids were facing so many difficulties, when the whole world was struggling, and we know that communities in urban situations who, in urban contexts, who often depended on daily wages or on sort of everyday labor for survival, went through a particularly difficult time, and there was a bad economy. The repressive tactics rose. And so we kind of formulated a response to it. And what we wanted at the time was to look at what was happening for street-connected children in terms of the police response, in terms of the protection agencies' response as well, because they were set up for a purpose and they were set up often giving very important services. But we wanted to look at what they were doing and look at the gaps and look at them with respect to child rights and with respect to UNCRC, but also the General Comment number 21. And the other thing was to team up. We actually wanted to team up with other organizations who were working with street-connected children. We are very small, and a lot of them, a lot of the time, are also relatively small, they're community-based. The ones who are very closely connected to the issues and who can speak to the reality the most. A lot of the time, they don't get the support of a lot of the bigger mainstream, a lot of the bigger organizations or the aid organizations. And so we wanted to sort of help them come to this epiphany that we'd had, that actually all of us do advocacy, and how can we do it better and how can we do it together? And the third bit was really that we wanted to have action points. So there are some problems, there are some very deep-rooted structural issues to do with urban poverty, and there are also sort of some challenges when it comes to policy, and we also understand that the challenges faced by policymakers, but then how do we get to a place where solutions are rooted in the reality of the kids that they are meant to be affecting, and how can they be informed by good practice, and how can they actually be informed by the communities that are being affected by policies and programs. So that's what we wanted. What we did with the support of the consortium was actually a series of 3 events over the course of the year, which started with a national, and these were blended sort of, these were, some were virtual, some were in person. And actually, the virtual bit worked out in some ways because we were able to engage a very wide range of people who may not have showed up in person. So we started off with sort of a national parliamentarians consultation. And here, I think what really worked was that we were able to find a champion, who was a policymaker and who was able to connect us with a bunch of other policymakers across party lines. Also, our own team was able to kind of really step up and get a wide range of people and kind of really sort of get sort of attention, I think, focused on the issues and on the event. So the first bit was a parliamentarian consultation, but I think probably the most important bit there was that we were able to also show a video protecting children's identities, but also with their voices depicting their reality. So there were a lot of difficult conversations that we wanted to start addressing, and a lot of different opinions in the virtual room and a lot of different approaches, and not everybody had that child rights lens. A lot of them were coming to this thinking about, sort of how children could be gotten off the streets, and generally it was not with a rights-based approach. So I think what was really powerful was having voices, having those children's voices in the room saying, okay, this is what we went through during COVID-19. Our families experienced debt, or we've been living in this same place, same space for generations. My father did the same thing. My grandmother did the same thing. So it was them talking about their stories, their lives, their challenges and their vulnerabilities, very frankly, and their experience with justice and with the police system. And so it wasn't us saying this is what's wrong. It was kids saying this is what we've experienced. And so I think that was powerful, and that was able to sort of spark off some conversations. The second bit was a civil society workshop on UN General Comment number 21, again, just to get people on the same page. It was again virtual, but also helped with sort of connecting and building those, sort of building that shared message, but also sort of planning what we were going to do ahead and planning the way forward. And the third one was a very practical action planning session that we did over 2 days. The first was with civil society organizations, and the second one was presenting our joint set of recommendations generated at like 2 a.m. that night, signed off on at like noon before being presented that afternoon to policymakers. So that was sort of the course of events. In reality, what we did was a lot more than sort of just those 3 events, because there was a lot that had to be done in the middle. So the first important bit was probably getting the champion and the platform. We had this fantastic M&A, Mehnaz Aziz, who heads up the child rights working group at the SDG Secretariat. A lot of words, a lot of kind of, but she gave us that platform, which was credible, which suddenly, was able to, we were able to then bring together policymakers as well as civil society organizations. We were able to get interest. The other thing was that during the first event, during the first consultation, our team was able to get together to get, again, sort of a headliner. I mean, so we were able to get the Minister of Human Rights to be there. And I think that, again, just helped bring a lot more people in the room. I think the work, in its, that one-off event with that sort of one-off superstar may not change the rest of the world, but it starts a conversation. And I think that was just having her hear that video as well, and having her starting to challenge perhaps some of the narrative that is dominant in Pakistan right now. I think that was an opportunity. The other thing was we had to sustain public engagement. So, we had social media campaigns that ran around this. We had we riffed off of the CSC Mythbuster campaign and had like a Pakistani version of it as well, and had op-eds coming. We tried to sort of get, engage with broadcast media as well, talking about just, again, looking at street connected children with more empathy and understanding their stories and listening to their stories. The other thing was meeting behind the doors with other stakeholders. So not everybody came in the room, and we tried to sort of reach out to them. And again, we had people who helped facilitate that access, and to those who didn't want to talk to us in the beginning. And so, and saying, okay, this is what we have, and this is what the UN General Comment number 21 says, which it really helps to have that as an anchor out there. Saying, this is good practice. This is not us. This is the world. This is sort of an international instrument that we're drawing upon. So that was really helpful. And yes, individual follow-ups. In terms of working with partners, like Noel said, we really benefited from knowledge and expertise. We had Consortium for Street Children members as well that we were in touch with, including Search for Justice. And a lot of it wasn't the legal landscape we weren't necessarily familiar with. A lot of the technical things we weren't necessarily familiar with, and they were. So that was very helpful. They had in-kind contributions, so Spark helped facilitate the videos and also gave us space for the workshop, which was great. The SDG Secretariat gave us a platform and a voice. The challenges were to do with a lot with the politics and stakeholder management. A lot of the time, it was very surprising. People didn't want to talk to each other, and didn't want to be associated with, didn't want to sign off on things that others were associated with, which was just, I think, different for it was so I think, again, it took a lot of individual follow-ups as well. Also, a lot of the time it seemed like it's hard to criticize people who are in power, and so I think managing that and managing the politics of it was also a bit of a challenge. The other bit was getting on the same page about the rights-based approach. Again, the UN General Comment was a helpful tool for that. And the last bit, which was a bit challenging, was letting go, because in advocacy, it's not about the individual or the organization. It's about something much bigger and about having impact that will be much bigger. So if we generated recommendations and they were picked up by an organization that will then pass them to a higher level, that may have nothing to do with us, but that's not the point. The point is to get the message through. So I think that those are sort of the lessons from the past year, and I think really are at the heart of it. We can see that cities are growing, kids are growing too. There are things that all children deserve, and whatever we can do together to make sure they get those, I think that would be great. So thank you, Lucy. I'm looking forward to hearing from Fanny as well, and to speaking to people in the Zoom room.
Thank you so much, Madiha. That was absolutely excellent. You really brought out some of the key issues that I know you and I and many of our members have also been working on. I really appreciated what you said about making people and helping people to understand that they're already doing advocacy, because that's something that a lot of people don't think about. They don't conceptualize their work in that way, and bringing people together can really amplify the work that's already being done. I also really liked your image of the general comment as an anchor for the government, but also for other organizations, and how you've used that as a tool for national advocacy in Pakistan is such a great example, I think. So thank you so much for sharing that with us. I've got my eye on the clock, so I'm going to move on now to our final speaker. So last but by no means least, we're now going to hear from Fanny from Child Rights Connect. Fanny, I can see you've started sharing your screen, which is great. So Fanny's going to speak to us today about the international perspective on collaborative advocacy and why working together in national contexts can make such a difference at the international level as well. So Fanny, over to you.
Thank you very much, Lucy, and thank you, Noel and Madiha. It was indeed very inspiring. So yeah, let me start quickly with our organization, Terra Connects. So we are one of the largest international and child rights network. We have around 90 members of organizations working at national, regional, and international level. And our mission is the realization of children's rights through the UN human rights system. And as I will speak about collaborative advocacy, I wanted to highlight that we recently developed a position paper on child rights mainstreaming and a call for the development of a UN-wide strategy on child rights, which was signed on by the consortium and by many organizations. So we very much welcome this support. Very briefly, because I will focus my presentation on the CRC reporting, which is our core work, but you can just, I invite you to think about all the other UN mechanisms and treaty bodies that exist. So expanding this presentation to the broader UN system. Yeah, just about who can engage in the CRC reporting cycle, which is the process to bring information to the attention of the UN Committee on the Right of the Child. So there is the Article 45 of the Convention on the Right of the Child, as well as the General Comment number 5 on general measures of implementations that explain explain the role of civil society and also provide a fundamental legal basis for civil society engagement as an entire part of the CRC reporting cycle. And so who can engage? Really any type of independent children's rights defenders working at national, regional, or international levels. So this includes the UN agencies, the NGOs, coalitions, NHRIs, ombudsperson, individual experts, and indeed the children themselves. So you can think about all these actors as potential partners for your advocacy. Just a quick refresher about the CRC reporting process, and please don't be afraid by these 2 cycles. Just to let you know that there are currently 2 reporting cycles. So I cannot speak only about one reporting cycle, because the reality is that there are 2 CRC reporting cycles at the moment to engage with the CRC committee, the standard one and the simplified reporting procedure. But whichever the cycle that is chosen by your state for the review, there are many entry points and opportunities for civil society to engage in both the reporting and the monitoring processes. So civil society organizations can really engage and use each and all the steps of the reporting cycle. And it is really important to be to take a proactive role in order to really take the most out of this cycle based on your own advocacy objectives and as well activities on your type of organization. Regarding the information that you can provide the committee with, it is extremely important for the committee to receive specific, reliable, and objective and evidence-based information. So the committee needs this information in order really to raise the right issues and to address the most concrete and effective recommendations to state parties, and different methodologies can be used to collect data and information. And there is the possibility to submit a comprehensive or rather a thematic report, to do individual or joint submissions, and the submissions can be public or confidential. But what is strongly encouraged whenever it's possible is to work together to produce one alternative report to tackle all children's rights really comprehensively. And this is really to help the committee to develop an overall understanding of the situation in the country. As you can imagine, committee members are under very intense time pressure to familiarize themselves with the relevant issues in a state. So when they receive several reports from one country, it might be difficult to know how the information fits together and how it should be interpreted. So preparing a joint report can offer many added values, including, of course, covering a greater range of child rights issues in a country by building on and also benefiting from the different members' areas of expertise and representing different regions and territories to allow the committee to have an overview of the country as a whole, but also in addition to the issues specific to the different entities. It can also increase the representativeness and credibility of the submission by speaking with one joint and strong voice, and also provide the opportunity to initiate and to reinforce collaboration with other child rights actors to facilitate a more coherent and collaborative advocacy at all levels, so local, national, and international. And it allows the NGOs with limited capacities and resources to engage in the process, because we know it's not always easy to engage with the UN with such mechanisms. So regardless of their size and capacity, and the CRC reporting process, for instance, is an excellent way actually to empower civil society throughout the process. And that's also an opportunity to trigger a debate on children's rights in your country, because it also allows for reflections on the key issues of concerns of the country overall, rather than only on the priorities of each individual organization. And finally, it's a useful way to promote a holistic and coordinated follow-up to the recommendations of the committee. So ideally, what we will recommend is to formalize a sustainable network of organization, ideally a national child rights coalition, really to ensure an ongoing engagement and advocacy. So some of the challenges that we have seen based on our experience, so indeed, and it was already mentioned, the need to balance the views of the different stakeholders, because we see that there are some competition sometimes leading to a lack of coordination at national level, and sometimes the networks struggle with the different interests and agenda, and there can be a lack of trust even and a lack of common objectives and strategy between the partners. So this often results in repeating issues being presented and makes it even more difficult for the committee to come up with priorities. So we think here it's missed opportunities as well for organizations to reinforce each other's works. And the lack of agreement around national priorities also leads to an increased number of reports being submitted to the committee. So indeed, there can be different views at national level, but the more reports there are, this means that rather than the national the national level setting out the priority concerns, it is then the committee who must make these recommendations. So some tips from the NGOs. So some of them, for instance, have joined a coalition report, but then they have produced, for instance, a longer report at national level for their own advocacy. So they included in their key messages and information in the coalition report. And then at national level, for their own advocacy at national level, they produce some other submissions. It's possible as well, if you submit a report, to cross-reference with cross-reference reports. So instead of repeating what the other already say in their report, but just to refer to the other reports. And also think about the annexes, because you can include your key messages in the report, and we know that word limit is always a challenge. So think about the annexes to expand, to elaborate on an issue, so that if the committee needs to learn more about a certain issue, they can refer to the annexes. The length of the process as well, especially under the simplified reporting procedure, which is a bit longer for the NGOs, and we know that engagement, monitoring, reporting at the UN level involves time and resources. But for some NGOs, it was actually an opportunity to develop cooperation at national level, really using this process building on this process to develop collaboration with other organizations. And then we see as well a lack of stability and sustainability of national coalitions, leading to a lack of ongoing engagement, and particularly in the follow-up. So there is most of the time an absence of advocacy strategy that can cause the coalition to dissolve between two reports. So what we encourage really is to plan from the very beginning for a long-term engagement in order to really have a secure, sustainable impact. So actually the reporting cycle, the reporting process is ongoing, because it is in fact a cycle which should never end, because monitoring a state compliance with its obligation is an ongoing process. So this is especially true during the follow-up period, during which is a key period, because this is really when the state is expected to implement the recommendations before the next review. So for both the state and civil society, the concluding observations, which are the recommendations that the committee is addressing to the state, does not and should not signal the end of the engagement. And children's rights defenders really have an important role to play here. Also, this is the duty of the state to implement recommendations, but civil society have a role to play in encouraging, supporting, and monitoring the state's actions to secure really a real impact on law and policy and practice at national and local levels. So doing joint advocacy activities here around the concluding observations is really more effective. So we invite always stakeholders to really take the time to debrief about the concluding observations. So not only the state parties, but really the civil society organizations to measure what impact they had on the concluding observations, and really for everyone to take ownership of these recommendations and see how they can use it to reinforce their own advocacy. It is as well possible to develop some tools to monitor and to measure the implementation progress that will be very useful for the next reporting cycle. So not to start again from scratch, but having a regular monitoring. And here I just want briefly to mention that in New Zealand, there is a monitoring group composed of the Office of the Children's Commissioner, the National Coalition, the Human Rights Commission, and UNICEF, and they meet on a regular basis, and they as well produce regular reports, so that then it's an ongoing monitoring, and then it's easier for the next cycle to report on the progress made by the state. And of course, what we always encourage is to see the broader UN system and to engage. So not only in CRC reporting, but there are other areas of work of the CRC committee, such as the day of general discussion, the general comments, that could be opportunities to reiterate your key messages, as well as the CRC elections. Here, civil society advocacy can also be important. And then seeing the other human rights treaty bodies and UN mechanisms. So rather than using the CRC reporting as a standalone activity, but using this in connection with other treaty bodies, with the UN, the Universal Periodic Review, the Human Rights Council, special rapporteurs, the SDGs, and also the regional mechanisms to really reinforce your advocacy in the long term. Here's just an overview of some of our publications to help you to navigate in this reporting cycle. And thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Fanny. You got through so much content in that time. I really applaud you. So thank you for that. Ellie, could you just pull up the slide deck again? And we can go to the next slide. Excellent, thank you. So we had anticipated time for a Q&A now. We're slightly out of timings from what we had anticipated. So what I'm going to suggest that we do is we go straight into the breakout rooms because you will be with the panelists in those breakout rooms, which will give you the opportunity to ask any questions you might have directly to them in there. We're going to go into 2 breakout rooms, so just to flag that for my CSC colleagues on the call. We'll go into 2 breakout rooms, and in a moment you'll receive an invitation to join that breakout room, so just follow the invitation when that comes through. The slide says 25 minutes. Unfortunately, I think that might be pushing it, but we're going to aim for about 20 minutes in the breakout rooms. Which should hopefully give you plenty of time to have a really rich discussion with your fellow participants. On the screen here, we've got some questions about what your priority advocacy message is or what they are, whether you work with other organisations on advocacy, what the challenges and benefits are, and also what CSC could do to encourage or support more collaborative advocacy. These are just intended as prompts. Don't feel that you have to answer all of these questions or rush through them. And if actually you want to focus on something different, maybe something from one of the presentations, then please feel free to do that. Hopefully that should be clear. Oh, I just hear somebody speaking. I'm just going to mute you. Sorry about that. Hopefully that's clear. As I said, there'll be CSC colleagues in both of the breakout rooms who should be able to explain anything that is unclear. I'm going to open the breakout rooms for you now. So just follow the instructions on your screen and I will see you all in about 20 minutes time. You should all have received, oh, there we go. I can see plenty of you moving into the breakout rooms. For anyone who hasn't yet, please do just follow the prompt that should be on your screen now, and it will take you to the breakout room. Okay, I can see Alfred, Brajesh, Rena still in this room. Do follow the invitation that's on your screen to join the breakout room. Just got Rena left, so Rena, if you can hear me, then please do follow the prompt on your screen. Again. There we go. I think we should have everybody back with us now. So Ellie, I think, yes, there we go. That's great. Oh, yeah. We got a slide for the feedback. Yes, excellent. So we've just got a few minutes, so unfortunately we won't have time to go into every detail, but I know that some of my colleagues were taking notes, so I look forward to reading back over those. But just starting with group one, so that was Fanny and Mediha and Catherine from CSC and Mariam were there. Would any of you like to just give us a flavour of what you were discussing in your breakout room?
Absolutely, Lucy, I'm happy to. It's Catherine. We had a really lovely conversation. So we talked about how important it is that children are part of the solution, but also how we do that in a way that's meaningful and how that can be done safely and ensure that we don't put them in any uncomfortable positions. And Sylvester and Madiha shared some really helpful tips on that, including, some solutions we could think about around if we were doing any in-person consultations with stakeholders, which are incredibly powerful to have children in the room sharing their views. If it was really challenging for them to do that and may not be the right thing, we could think about doing anonymized videos, for example, which could be filmed beforehand. We also had a really in-depth and super practical conversation about how to connect the Universal Periodic Report with child rights reporting, and how to actually really bring it together around the Convention on the Rights of the Child. So Child Rights Connect shared with us a fantastic guide that they have, which perhaps we can share with the notes as well. But I think the key point from that was that it's really important part of your follow-up is to engage in that UPR process and to prioritise the actions and recommendations targeting children. And that's as part of your engagement, and ask governments what they're doing on those recommendations for street children in particular. And then we also noted very briefly just how hard it is to network in a COVID environment for many people, challenges of that online. So for some of us, we're reflecting that can be a challenge in advocacy when we're trying to connect with others.
Thank you so much, Catherine. It sounds like you covered so much ground in the time you were in your breakout room. I don't know if anybody else from Catherine's group wants to quickly add any points, but it sounds to me like that was very comprehensive. No? In which case, let's move on to breakout room 2, which Noelle was part of, and Lucy and Pia from CSC. So would any of you like to give us just a taste of what you were discussing together?
I can, if my colleagues and okay. So we came up with we were talking about how difficult it is to work with a government when they are negative or hostile or want to gag discussions on human rights. The expectation that you this was from Paul from Karanalaya in India. The expectation is not do that and how you'd be unpopular, and maybe some of the advice around that. So Noelle said about changing the kind of specific messaging, and also how the timing of national elections in Nigeria really helps when politicians are making a lot of promises. And the other solutions was to reframe it as children's rights rather than human rights, because that can work a little better. Using the reference point of the UNCRC and the general comment that all governments have already signed up to, that can work better. And also, really empowering the children to speak on behalf of their own issues. And that's something that Karen and I were talking about. Their voice is really, really powerful in this. And they were talking about their examples of children who didn't have identity cards during COVID and not being able to access services. So the second thing we spoke about as well was about how it can be quite hard to maintain and keep up a network, as Noelle had identified, and about negotiating. We didn't come up with a solution for this, but about kind of negotiating some of those dynamics that exist within a network, and also when networks do actually then break down when there's an issue of kind of resources, and the importance of giving credit to all of the stakeholders involved in a network, because often smaller organizations won't want to be part of it if they know that they're less incentivized to take part in a network if all of the credit goes to the much larger organizations. So I think that briefly captures what the very rich discussion that we're having, but do come in, anyone in that group, if I didn't quite capture all of that.
Thank you so much, Lucy. Again, it sounds like you covered so much ground in that breakout room, and I definitely could talk about this for another hour, so I am sorry that we've got such limited time left. Did anybody else in Lucy's group want to come in and add anything? No, in which case that was a very good summary, Luce.
Olivia's put some bits in the chat. I think there's an issue with sound there from our group.
Excellent. I saw Olivia's beautiful metaphor or image that she shared in the chat, which was that when spider webs unite, they can tie up a lion, which is an absolutely perfect image of what we've been talking about today. And also Sister Olivia shared that one challenge of collaborative advocacy can be a lack of patience to give us time for consensus to emerge, which I think links in with a lot of what Noelle was saying about timing and just organisations not necessarily finding the time to come together on these things. So I would like to encourage you to share any links or any contact details in the chat if you'd like to follow up any of these conversations with our speakers or with other participants who you've learned from today. So just do feel free to do that. Can we move to the next slide, please, Ellie? And I think the next one was rogue slide. So yes, please do email me if you'd like to discuss any of this any further. My email address is on the screen, and I'm always happy to chat about advocacy, as all of my colleagues will probably testify. But also do feel free to ask for other people's details if you're interested in talking to them. Share links that you've got. That's really the point of this session, is to help us think about how we can collaborate and be stronger together. So I'm aware that we've just got 2 minutes left. And I'm really grateful to all of you for hanging in with us right to the end of this network forum. I'm looking at the list of participants. Some of you have been with us for every single session, which is real dedication. So thank you for that. Ellie, if you could just go to the next slide. As you will see, we've just got one session left, which is our closing session, which is coming up at 4 p.m. GMT. And that will be an opportunity for all of us to reflect on what we've learned over the past few days. And Pia, our Chief Executive, will be bringing all of those threads together and helping us to think about what we've learned and where we're going to go next with this information. So the only thing that remains is for me to say a huge thank you again to Noelle, Mediha and Fanny. Your insights, as ever, were so valuable, and I think all of us have learned from your presentations today and from your experiences. I just, as ever, applaud the work that you're doing, and I'm sure we'll all be in touch again to carry this on moving forward. I hope I haven't forgotten anything. I can see Lucy shaking her head, thank you. So in that case, thank you so much, everyone. And we will obviously be in touch with you soon and hope to see you in a few minutes' time at the closing session. So thank you all.
Thank you very much. It was a wonderful session. This will be my last session because it will be too late to join the closing session. Thank you very much for the wonderful 4 days program, everybody.
Thank you
so much. It was such a pleasure being part of this network, and I'm happy my baby didn't wake up. So yes. Oh yes, so yeah, I'm so happy. Thank you.
I'm so pleased, Noelle, that you have a sleeping baby still. Thank you, everyone, and thank you to everyone who's stayed up late as well. We know that the time can be tricky for some of you. I'll see you all soon.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.